Hello and welcome to our special coverage on COVID-19, where we bring you all the update and analysis. So Ghana is increasing in the number of confirmed cases, and we've also gone up with recovered people as well as those who have died. We'll be looking at these and also be looking at the global figures. How are we faring globally? Are the numbers going up? Who is in the lead? And also, very soon we'll be waiting to hear the president. Are we going to be having an extension of the lockdown, or are we going to have more regions, This is our special coverage on COVID-19. My name is Frime Dunyame. I will introduce my guest soon, and our conversation will be underway. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is our special coverage on COVID-19. My guest in the studio, Kujakutu Boateng, who is head of new media and research, and Bernard Kokwa-Avle, who is general manager Citi FM, Citi TV, and also host of Citi Breakfast Show and Point of View. Gentlemen, you're welcome.
Thank you, Frima. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Right, so currently, we have recorded new figures. So Ghana's case count stands at 834. We have 99 people recovering, and we have 9 people dead. Bernard, this is the update so far.
So, yeah, what that means is that between the last time this program was aired and today, one more person has died. It also means that we've had 17 more recoveries. It also means that we've had 193 new cases. The Ghana Health Service is very careful to say that these are not newly occurring infections, but these numbers are from a backlog of 12,000 samples taken earlier. So essentially saying that it's not as if between the last time we came on air and today 193 people got infected. It just means that 193 out of a group of samples taken, they don't tell us when, whether those samples were taken last week or last 2 weeks. So we are not very sure of the exact date, but what we know is that this was a backlog of samples. We'll discuss the implications of this. But it also then shows you some other interesting things. So you have 193 new cases, or old tests resulting in new infections. You have 1 more death. Also, before the last program, we had 2 people critically ill. Now you have 4. It means that you presume that the one who was the 2 were critically ill, 1 has died, and the 1 left, 2 have joined. So you have 3 have joined. So you have 4 critically stroke moderately ill, 9 deaths. Then you also have some interesting breakdown for regions, which I'm sure we can do. So when we're at 641, so that the last figure given was 641. Before that, we are 636. Now, when we had 636, we had 5 extra cases from Greater Accra, mostly from Ayawaso West, Ayawaso North, and Ayawaso Central, bringing it to 641. In that breakdown, all the other regions remain the same. So Greater Accra was 514, Ashanti 53, Eastern 41, Northern 10, Volta 9, Upper West 7, Upper East 4, Northeast, Western, and Central 1. This additional 193 from the backlog of samples, Greater Accra has the most of the new cases. Of the 193, Greater Accra has 171. Then the Eastern region has 10. So the last time Eastern region has 41, now Eastern region has 51. Again, we can comment on this later. Ashanti, which was at 53, had 6 more, so now they are 59. So Greater Accra is leading with 685, Ashanti 59, Eastern 51. Northern region, which for a long time remained at 10. Because if you go on the screen, the mandatory quarantine for Tamale has always been 10. Now we have 1 more, so it's 11. We don't know where that 1 came from, in which particular part of the Northern region. Volta region has remained 9. Some people say because we are number 9, our 9 won't change. We are number 9 people. Upper West used to be 7 in the previous count. Before last it was 7, now it's 8. So Upper East has 1 extra. Upper East has been 4 for a while. It's now moved +4 to 8. Northeast, Western, Central each remain at 1. So the key headlines: Greater Accra has increased by 171. Presumably, majority of the samples, the 12,000 backlogs from Greater Accra. Greater Accra is still the epicenter. Ashanti increased by 6. Eastern increased by 10. Upper East increased by 4. Northern Upper East increased by 1. The rest remain the same. Kojo will break down the rest of the information.
Kojo.
Yes, and it's quite interesting. So Bernard is giving us the figures from the last time we reported. But if we even decide to go further, let's say look at the weekend review, because last week we were here to discuss this particular, to discuss the cases. And last week, the case count was 329. Right, 329. Eastern region had 25. As at last week. Ashanti had 40, now it's about 59. Northern had 10, now it's 11. Central had 1. Northeast had 1. Upper East had 1. Upper West had 1. Now they each have 8, Upper East and Upper West. So the general case count has increased from the 300s to the 800s. And now the regional figures are also going up. If we also decide to look at COVID-19 critically, today is the 18th of April, right? So let's look at COVID-19 cases in the past 1 month in Ghana. On the 18th of March, we had 9 confirmed cases, 0 recoveries, 0 deaths, 9 active cases, right?
Did we have people in critical condition at that time?
They hadn't given us those breakdowns.
Details.
So 18th March, which is a month ago, we had 9 cases. A month on, we have 834, meaning we have 825 new cases, right? Now, if you look at the recoveries, and you can look at the charts. So where the mouse is pointing to, if you check the 8th of March to 15th of March, thereabouts. You see the number of cases we had. So 15th March we had 6 cases. 18th of March we had 9. And it's risen all the way up to the 800s. If you look at the active cases we've been dealing with since, because we've had recoveries and deaths, it's also going up. Around the 12th of April, when we had our peak and reported new cases, there were a lot of recoveries. So the number of active cases came down. But now we have new confirmed cases taking our charts, our line up again. And then if you look at the new cases, the highest before today was the 12th of April. The new cases. Now today's report means that today's one is the peak of the new cases. Now what is unclear, and what I really want us to have an understanding of from the health service, is how we are doing the testing and how we are reporting. Because if these new cases, listening to what we are being told, that one, laboratories are working day and night, right? And that new cases, the general public is advised that this does not represent new infections that are occurring. It represents results from tests of a backlog of samples.
Okay, so if I may read something from the Ghana Health Service, then we get it clearly. So the Ghana Health Service says it is supervising the completion of a backlog of laboratory samples which have been picked for testing as part of the COVID-19 testing exercise. This is after some 57,000 samples have already been successfully tested as of April 15, 2020. Now, in the first batch of this backlog, an additional 198 have been found to be positive. This will bring Ghana's total case count to 834 at the moment. The general public is, however, advised that this does not represent new infections that are occurring. It represents results from tests of a backlog of samples. The laboratories have been working day and night to test this large number of samples. All the testing would be completed. Total samples tested so far now stands at 60,916 with 1.37% testing positive. The results of these backlog of samples when released does not mean the number of new cases recorded on the day of the report. Regions that have been reported cases are Greater Accra, Ashanti, Eastern. I mean, we've mentioned those already. So this is what is coming from the Ghana Health Service.
And that's where I have a challenge. If we have so many backlogs, how do we then understand the nature of infections and how we are recording daily infections based on people's interactivities with other people? You understand? If I understand this very well, for example, if you test me today and I'm going to see the results in, say, a week or two, what protocols are put in place for me? Am I put in a mandatory quarantine? Are people put in those spaces so that they do not go about spreading whilst they wait for their results? I think those are the issues that really worry me a bit. And how can we, as soon as possible, ensure that we are able to do the test and clear all our backlogs? We've been told that new labs have been added, new testing facilities have been added, but if we keep having these backlogs and we cannot clear them early enough, I think it doesn't give us the real situation, the real daily situation, real-time situation for us to really strategize to deal with this. I don't know what Bernard thinks about this.
Because Bernard, if you look at what the service is saying, GHS is saying, it says hopefully in the next few days all the testing would be completed. So the people who probably have dealt with others who are going to be testing positive, if the testing is ending, what next?
So that's a very important question. I'm careful to say that all the information that we have may not be all the information that they may be putting out. So that in a public communication like this, I'm sure the experts decide on what the public can handle and what they can't. So I am hoping that those advising the president have a better breakdown than you and I sitting here. Now, it's important to differentiate between newly occurring cases and cases that already exist. Now, the other important information missing here is the new samples that produced 193, when were they taken? Don't forget, the lockdown was announced in the last week of March. So you would want to know if these samples were taken before the lockdown. You can't really measure the efficacy of the lockdown. If these samples were taken after the lockdown, then you can compare the extra 193 out of 12,000. That's if it is the total 12,000. Because the other point they haven't made is whether this 193 cases are from the full 12,000. If that is the case, that 193 out of 12,000, which if this was taken after lockdown, how does that compare with lockdown efficiency? Now, the public may not necessarily need all these details, but I sincerely hope that those who are advising the president ahead of his announcement of the lockdown review will have these numbers, because the purpose of a lockdown is to then put in measures to slow down the new cases.
Infections.
So if the Ghana Health Service is taking pains to tell us that this does not refer to new cases, I'm not sure whether they want us to say, okay, it means we should be happy, or whether it means don't be too sad. I don't know what they are trying to say by that caveat. Do you understand? Because what they should be looking out for is, since we implemented a lockdown, is our rate of infection moving up or down? I do appreciate that everywhere in the world, your test takes some time to come in. But the date you take your sample can let you know whether post-lockdown or pre-lockdown we are doing better or worse. So for me, it's an important piece of information that they themselves need. Okay, so for them to say this does not represent newly occurring cases, and they've said about 3 times. I don't know why they keep saying that. Whether maybe they feel that maybe we will say between 18th March and 18th April, cases have jumped from 9 to 834. So we will be alarmed. Do you understand me? So maybe they are trying to say, don't be alarmed. I don't know. And that message can also fight against the message of stay home. Okay, so there's a balance here. You need to give people a real sense of reality so they can actually adhere to the lockdown. But I also don't want to alarm people so that they will start losing hope and become despondent.
Yeah.
I think the closer we are to reality, the better. Because if we know the newly occurring cases, then we'll know whether our excuse to go and collect fish across the road makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
When cases are increasing this much. Again, the breakdown given, for example, when we moved from 636 to 641, they gave us the 4 districts that the 5 cases came from. Now we have a regional breakdown. We extrapolated a regional breakdown. They didn't give it to us. We extrapolated it based on the old figures. They haven't reconfirmed the epicenters.
Yeah.
So, for example, last week by now, Eastern region are 25. Now they are 51. So that's double.
And you don't know why
are these from the same camp B?
The AFCON camp.
Because a week ago we were told that they were doing contact tracing in Kpong because some of the people left the camp to Kpong. Do we know whether the Kpong samples have been tested? We don't know all these things. So, look, we will make do with what we have. What I will say to people is that there's a difference between what is being displayed on the graph and what is presently occurring.
Yeah.
And it makes more sense to be precautious and assume that more people have the disease than we are reporting, especially because the tests take a while to come in. Again, it will be very important for us to know whether those who are tested, because again, this question was asked of Kojo Oponkroma, how quickly do tests happen? He said, well, because we are so interested in the positives, when the test results come in, we only contact the positive ones and we isolate them. Do you understand me? So it means that your test result may be delayed because you are negative. But now you are telling us there's a backlog of 12,000 who didn't know that they were positive or negative. So if these 12,000 people, out of the 193 are positive, 11,000 of them could have been moving about freely without any symptoms. But 193 could have infected more people. Do you get me? That's the other point. Then we also don't know the rate of infection per person.
Yeah.
Earlier research had said the virus could infect 3 people every 3 days. New research is suggesting that in Asia, it could infect up to 5 people. We don't really know because we haven't done those specific studies here. So my point is that I will err on the side of caution. I will assume the cases are more, and the health authorities must start thinking about if there's going to be a spike in hospitalization. The only good news here is that if you look at the breakdown, critically ill is also very small.
Yeah.
So most of the people are well responding to treatment. And so you can compare some figures. Your recovery is always higher than your death.
Yeah.
And your recovery is also higher than your responding to treatment is bigger than your critically or moderately ill. That is what gives me hope that many more people are responding to treatment and are recovering than those who are deteriorating. That could be one good sign. The other point that troubles me a bit is all the recoveries and deaths are coming from the routine surveillance. We don't have any recovery from the mandatory quarantine, who have taken at least 2 weeks. And we, of course, the enhanced surveillance is very new. So that one, you shouldn't be too concerned, 373. But the mandatory quarantine for Tamale was for a long time 10, it's now 11. The mandatory quarantine for Ghana, 105. It's still 105. Nobody critically ill, nobody dying, but nobody has recovered yet. It will be good to check those statistics out and compare with the routine surveillance to know if, because don't forget, those in the mandatory quarantine are all imported, and those in the routine surveillance and the enhanced contact tracing are mostly community transmissions. So you can use that information if you have it to also determine whether those who get it here are recovering faster than those who brought it from abroad.
Yeah.
Do you follow me? So there's a lot of questions you can ask about the data. But for me, there are positives and there are negatives. We just have to be careful.
And Bernard, on the cases and whether there are a backlog of cases, if we look at the map, let's go back to the Ghana Health Service website. Okay. There's a chart they've put up, the cumulative COVID-19 cases, March to April 2020. Confirmed cases, COVID-19, Ghana, by date sample taken. It's quite clear there, right? So if we have
we have it on the screen.
Yes. So if you look at this and you check 15th April, the number of cases around then was 814 thereabouts, right? So if these cases, the new ones are a backlog, are we going to see a revision of this particular graph that they've put up? You see, we've seen cases in China, Wuhan, when they reported a certain number of cases up to a certain point, and they come back to say that, well, the cases were understated, right?
Yeah.
So are we going to reconfigure this particular chart. If that is so. And the other question, confirmed cases by date sample taken. Do we do first in, first out? As in, when your sample is taken, it's tested before a new, and then when the sample is tested, do we add it to the chart based on the day it was the results came, or we just bundle all of them together and report on a specific day? You understand? So for example, today we waited for 3 days before we got today's update, and we have a new set of cases. So are we assuming those cases are cases for today, or the Ghana Health Service itself has a chart that gives them accurately daily updates that helps them and informs them as to how to deal with the situation? If they have that, then that's great. If they don't, then it gives me the impression that we are not capturing the data right to be able to interpret the data to help us deal with the situation.
Bernard mentioned, I mean, what could be happening in this lockdown as well. We shouldn't also forget that we've had people who have tested positive escaping and meeting other people and bringing them back. So are we factoring all these people in? Remember the 2 Nigerians, you know, and they were out there, people didn't know them, but they dealt with people. So are we also looking at extending the testing to all these areas and to cover these people?
There are obviously more questions than answers. From the data is that, number one, Ghana has the best testing rate in Africa, which is a very important point. And it seems as if the number of tests we are told we have done could even soon catch up with South Africa. For a population of 30 million, we've done 60,000 tests. South Africa's tests haven't crossed the 100,000 as far as I know, and they are double our population size. The key to this game is test, test, test. But the small print under the test is the results must come in quick, because you social distance, you quarantine, you lock down, so you identify, isolate, and treat. If the lag time between sample taken and result coming is 14 days, within which the virus could have done what it would do to you, and you could have shared it, if it's even 3 people every 2 days, then whilst your test numbers may be high, you are still not ahead of the virus, because new infections may surpass what your data is telling you. So this is a chain that things must, once you miss one of the conditions, the data changes its meaning. So the good news we've heard is that new testing centers are coming on stream. Ho is coming on stream. Kolebu's lab has been enhanced. We are hearing conversations about private sector labs coming in. I think our testing capacity must double for us to really be clear in our minds that we are going to be ahead of this virus. So far, our testing is great, but once the testing capacity doubles, what will happen is that the length of time the samples take gets shorter. So the rate and the likelihood of infection of people waiting for their samples reduces. So it's not as if we just want to double our testing capacity to increase the samples taken. I prefer double your testing capacity to limit the length of time the results take to come. So there will be no backlog, because a backlog is really a meaningless statistic to know what is newly occurring. Do you follow me? So these are some of the things going through my head. And the other quick point is that when you look on the African continent, so yesterday the WHO, I'm from the WHO press conferences, and sometimes when you listen to the world people, you are really scared. So for example, the UN agency says at least 300,000 Africans are expected to die in the coronavirus pandemic. And then WHO also said Africa's coronavirus cases could hit 10 million in 6 months.
Don't forget what Mrs. Gates also said.
Yes. So when you read some of these stories, and then you look at the breakdown of our cases, and you have only 3 people in critical condition, most of the people are doing well, then you tend to ask, who should I believe here? Okay. And again, if you look at the death rate, if we can go through the African continent again quickly. So Ghana, 834 cases, 9 have died. Okay. Cote d'Ivoire, 742 cases, 6 have died. Senegal seems to have flattened a bit, 350 cases, 3 have died. Cameroon, 1,017 cases, 22 have died. South Africa, 250 have died. My point is, if what the WHO is saying is to be believed, it means that we are at the very early stage of our aspect of the pandemic. Okay, because you go to places in Europe and the number of deaths, I mean, Sweden.
So, but if the numbers we are recording now is also anything to go by,
you see, those numbers could be a function of. So there are two things here.
Yeah.
Sweden, for example, has 13,822 cases, and 1,511 have died. Clearly, the percentage of cases that result in mortality in Europe is much higher than the percentage of cases that results in mortality in any of African countries. Okay, whether that means we are at an earlier stage of our curve, or whether that means the virus is more virulent and deadly in Europe than Africa, I'm not qualified to say. But it's just an interesting point to note that Russia, almost all the countries in the temperate zones, the number of people who have died as a percentage of those who have the case is much higher than in Africa. So when you hear the WHO say that up to 300,000 Africans could die, the suggestion is that we are probably at an early part of our curve. But there are certain parts of me that tells me that maybe because we don't test as much, we don't really know how many people actually have the virus. And also because of the way we live and the lack of access to health care, some people may have died, but we are not even recording them in the health system. Or if you look at the rate of percent of people who are critically ill based on official statistics, means that maybe it's not killing people as quickly here as it is elsewhere. All these are possible. Okay, but it's pretty scary when you read WHO say that in the next 6 months, because we are here thinking lockdown must be removed tomorrow. And if I can read the story,
people are really planning with just 3 months in mind.
And this is from WHO, Al Jazeera. Coronavirus cases in Africa could surge from just 1,000 now to 10 million within 3 to 6 months, according to provisional modeling, a regional World Health Organization official said. Now, I need to say that modeling for a whole continent is more complicated than modeling for a country. And Abeka Nkrumah did some interesting model for Ghana, which I think is more realistic. I don't know if you have the audio there. He basically, a week and a half ago, predicted that he thinks our cases will get to 1,500 with lockdown. And I think in this case, country models make more sense than a whole continent model, because a continent has Egypt and South Sudan. I mean, if you look at the rate of disparity, the informality in South Sudan, the lack of access to healthcare, modeling for a continent will require a lot more assumptions, right? So I will stick to the local information here, because honestly, if you tell me that up to 10 million cases in Africa,
that's quite frightening.
300,000 people could die. I don't know whether the percentage of death is based on the global average or on the Africa average. Do you follow me? So sometimes we need to be very careful. What I will say is that let's try and listen to the local experts, but also compare to what globally people say, and then form a better judgment for ourselves. Right,
so this is our special coverage on COVID-19. You can also be part of our conversation by sending your messages to 0550-585832. Kojo, so quickly update us on the global figures. How are we faring there?
We crossed the 2 million cases count sometime within the week. Now we are at 2.27 million. And total deaths stand at 156. Now 156,000, sorry. 156,000. Now, if you look at the countries that are testing, the United States has so far done 3.5 million tests for COVID-19. Bernard was talking about the mortality and how the global modeling and the assumptions made cannot be applied to Ghana. Now, if you check case mortality by country, and if you look at the ratio, the mortality ratio, Belgium has a mortality ratio of 14.7%, followed by the UK at 13.3%, and then Italy, France, Netherlands, Spain, Iran, China, US, Germany. Bernard says something interesting, that if you look at the countries in the temperate areas, they seem to have higher mortalities. And if you look at this list, Belgium, UK, Italy, France, Netherlands, Spain, they're all doing mortality ratios above 10%, right? China has 5.5, US has 5.3. The only odd country out of the lists I mentioned from Europe is Germany, that has a mortality ratio of 3.1.
In fact, their health minister declared coronavirus manageable and they are opening schools and other public places gradually in the coming week. So Germany, if so far in Europe they seem to be the country with the most control and doing the best management. Some people say it's because their testing capacity is the best. Some people think it's because they did their lockdown and their restrictions earlier. Some people think it's because Germany is not as densely populated in its main cities as England is. It could be a mix of the three. But what is clear is that Germany is an outlier when it comes to Europe. A lot of European countries, the mortality rate, as Kojo said, is higher than 10%.
And if you check countries like Denmark as well, Denmark is also 4.6%. They are a bit close to Germany in the way their urban spaces are organized and the way the people live. If you compare Germany to London, for example, if you compare Germany to the UK and their major cities, the lifestyles are different. London, New York City, lifestyles are almost the same. So you see similar trends.
Even so let's make it easy. So, for example, London's economy is probably about 40% of the whole of UK. Germany's biggest city, which is Munich, is not up to even 20% of the whole of Germany. So it just tells you that a lot more people live in London and more is concentrated, and because of their underground system and the way people use public transport and things, that's a lot of people say that Boris Johnson didn't do well by not doing the lockdown earlier. You get my point. So that's just one of those nuances you should use. You shouldn't just say Germany has more cases. How come there are fewer deaths? There could be a lot of reasons. So, but you can go on.
So basically, that's how the global figures. We've crossed 2.2. We are doing 2.27. 156,000 people have died. That's a whole district in Ghana. It could even be 3 or 4 districts combined in some of the less populated areas. So that's a lot. And the US is still leading, 706,000 people confirmed. Spain 191,000, Italy 172,000, and France 149,000. So the cases are still going up. Ghana, we have our own challenge. And as a doctor friend of mine was telling me, he said that if you have been tested, or negative. So whilst you wait for your result, no matter how long it will come, you would have to wait for it to come. You still have to take the public interests into consideration and stay at home or isolate yourself so that when the results come, whether it's negative or positive, you know what to do.
Right, so I have some messages. Let me quickly go through them. So we have, if we say we spend 2 million a day to feed about 400,000 vulnerable, what it means is that we spend 10 million in 5 days. Please, can we feed just a quarter of these people daily, which means that we can save about 1.5 million a day. So I'm sure that's when we come to the lockdown, we'll look at all these excesses as well. Now, Kojo Dikadi from Spintex says, can you tell us about the radiation equipment of atomic energy, which is said to kill the virus on clothes or PPEs? Okay, so we'll see about that. Now, special COVID-19 coverage. Okay, so somebody's giving us a hashtag there. Hashtag special COVID-19 coverage. False negatives are retested and number soars up. What about asymptomatic false positive test results declared when in actual fact they are negative, do not have the diseases but are tested positive? Kwame Sama, I don't really get it. I don't know if
his
you
point is
understand.
that, you see, for some people, you test once and they are negative. You wait and test 2 days later, I found out they are positive. He's saying that that should not be the only thing we say. We should also look at those who, when you test, they are supposed to be positive today, but you test the next 2 days and realize that they are negative. So you need to net that out to get the real case, because in some instances, you test somebody and realize that the result you got was actually not correct.
Okay.
But I think it's a technical point he's making, so that maybe if they gave us those numbers too, then we would know a more accurate picture.
Well,
that's what he's trying to say.
Okay, so looking at the, could you want to add something?
Yes, somebody asked the question about the radiation technology. And it's something that we've even published on our website. So the researchers at the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission collaborated with the International Atomic Energy Commission. What they are doing is to use radiation to kill pathogens, right? And they've been able to do this to for food processing, medical product sterilization, and industrial product sterilization. Now, their facility is used to sterilize, decontaminate, or treat agro products to delay ripening, inhibit sprouting, or for phytosanitary purposes. And what they are saying is that now that we are fighting COVID-19 and we don't have enough PPEs, the government should give them some funding so that all the PPE that is discarded by the hospitals, instead of throwing them away, they will use their technology to sanitize the PPE so that we can reuse them, because we don't have enough for the hospitals. But then they have technology which needs just a little bit more investment so that they can do this in a larger scale. And their proposal is twofold. It helps us reuse PPE because they are going to sterilize them and sanitize them, if I should use those two words at a go. And it's also going to help us reduce the waste we are generating for the environment. Because people are wearing a lot of gloves, a lot of PPE, and most of these are single use, so you throw them away. It means our landfill site, which is dead, is also going to have a lot more waste being sent there. So if you are reusing them using their technology, it saves us a lot of money from buying more, getting our health care professionals to have PPE when they need PPE, and also manage waste. And that story is on citinewsroom.com. So those who want to read more about it, just go to citinewsroom.com, look for mobilizing Ghanaian expertise to combat COVID-19, and you can get more. Right.
So now we are almost at the end of the 3-week-long lockdown. What is going to be happening after Sunday? You know, the president is going to be addressing us pretty soon, and we will know what's going to happen. But people have been talking, people giving all kinds of reasons. Now, your good friend Bernard, health economist Dr. Gordon Abekan-Kroma, is cautioning against calls for government not to extend the lockdown in parts of the country. We have the clip, so let's take a look.
Have we been very effective in terms of this lockdown? Now, I have been looking at, now when we talk about effectiveness, most Ghanaians will be judging by what they see on the streets and things like that. I would say that by and large, if we look at the overall management of this problem, I would say that the government has done pretty much well. Of course, we do all agree that maybe if some of the measures had come in early enough, we probably wouldn't be where we are. But again, I always argue that that is not something that we can cry over, because that is spilled milk. There is not much you can do about it. And what we need to concentrate on is what is before us. In terms of the way they've managed this, I think that I've been intrigued. They've done it the way it ought to be. But the issue is as to whether people have really stayed at home and we've been able to limit movement, because the lockdown is supposed to limit movement, because this virus does not move. It's humans who move it. One of the ways by which we can look at that is probably to look at our telcos, because they are the best to be able to give us data on movement. Right now, the only one I've seen is Vodafone, who are doing something with the Ghana Statistical Service. But of course, you know that if you look at penetration, Vodafone is very small. And so you would have wanted to see data from MTN, which is currently not available. Apple has also given us some sort of data, but within Africa, penetration of Apple devices is quite low. So you would want to look at Google devices. And Google has also given us some mobility report. Now they've given us 2 versions, and I've tried to look at the 2 versions. So the first version was released somewhere around the 1st of April. That is just at the point where we implemented the partial lockdown. Now, if you look at the figures, and what Google has done is very good. They've tried to look at movements to recreational and retail areas, grocery and pharmacies, parks, and then they've also looked at movement to workplaces, and then concentration in residential areas. Now, if you look at the changes aren't that drastic. So it gives me an idea that if this Google report is something to go by, it means that movement hasn't changed that much. Now, let me give a caution. This report is just based on those who are using Google devices, who have activated their positional sensors, and so they're able to get data on who is moving. And I'll give you a typical example. So, for instance, if you look at the report on the 1st of April, if you look at movement to recreational and retail areas, it was down by 52%. Now, if you look at the latest version, which was released just about 2 days ago, movement is down by 54%, so which is just a 2 percentage point, which is very, very small. Now, if you look at movement to pharmacy and groceries, it was 40, it still remains 40. To parks, it was 33, it's now 34. And then the most important one, which is residential areas, it was plus 20, is now plus 22. So just about 2 percentage points. And then movement to workplaces, it was 13, okay, now down by about 25%. So it tells me that movement hasn't changed that much. So that's what the issue is. We need to be able to do a lot more to be able to limit movement. People have started to talk about the issue of maybe we need to begin to take off the lockdown. And I'm saying we have to be quite careful, because I don't think that we are at the apex of our curve yet. And Mr. Boafu, you remember that the last time I had a discussion with you in your office,
yes,
I had done some modeling, and then I told you that if the restriction that we are putting in place, assuming it was going to work by just 30% in depressing the transmission rates of about 2.2%, and my 2.2% was generous because the pre-restrictions transmission rate in Wuhan was just about 3.4%, and I used just 2.2%. With several other parameters on a population of about 30 million, I projected that we're going to have close to about 500 infections within a month, and we'll have over 1,000 people who will be incubating the virus. And so we are nowhere near the apex of our curve. And so when people begin to talk about taking off the lockdown, we've got to be careful. And so that for a start.
Right, so health economist Dr. Gordon Abekan-Kromah there, speaking to my colleague Godfred Akoto-Boafu. Bernard, so this is what Dr. Abekan-Kromah is telling us. So far, we've done almost 3 weeks. We are just at the end of it. What is your assessment of how we fared?
That's a very interesting question. Couple of quick things. The Google movement map, I don't think does it for me. Because look, we've done, there are two ways of doing research. You can do it with data from phones like Google did, but anecdotally, as we every day in the lockdown period, we have a program we call About Town. It's very clear that movement has reduced. So if Google is telling you that between April 1 and April 16, in some cases, movement has even gone up.
Places,
I mean, I don't know whether they did it for just the lockdown areas of the whole of Ghana, but I mean, we drive through Accra, movement has reduced. Okay, and I live here. Okay, and we go out every day. So I need to understand what algorithm they are using to decide that and what it means. Sometimes just using data, as in Google says movement has reduced by X%, may not really tell you the story, because we all know that when they closed the market, Accra almost emptied. Every day since the lockdown, you've had, I can say, at least 3/4 of the region is in lockdown. Although when we go out, we see people moving around. So I don't know how they did this. What I think is more important is the point he makes about we not having reached the peak. That I tend to agree with, because we have already admitted that the new cases we are reporting are not newly occurring infections, but are historically old from backlog of samples. Do you understand me? So if the new figures had been for samples taken only 3 days ago, then I would have been in a better position to say that the lockdown is working or not. But not having that information and having to wait for a week and a few days for these results to come in, I would be very foolish to assume that we've gotten to the top of our curve. All right? So I tend to agree with him when he says that we may not have reached the peak of our curve, but we also need to understand that it's not an either or. We are in a situation where your economy is very informal and people are starving. right? So you are making people choose between health and hunger. Both can kill.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say because our absolute test numbers are higher than most countries, and because we have a clear sense of the epicenters of the virus infections, based on the 834 cases, we know where the problem is. We can modify the lockdown. I'm not saying we should end it or extend it. That's not the word anymore. You've had 60,000 samples. You've had almost 900 cases. It should give you enough information to say, you know what, we can ease the restrictions in certain parts of Accra. If, for example, you notice that Teshin, Nungwa, and Tema don't have those many cases, you can ease movement there and say, Ayawaso West, Ayawaso North, Ayawaso Central. So you can lock in Ayawaso and still allow Tema to work. Do you get me? So what I'm expecting is a modification of the lockdown and not either extension or removal. Because you can't have 60,000 tests and still be using a bland policy which is not that nuanced. Do you follow me? Now we have enough information on the country to know that certain regions, if the Western region issue is true that it's only one case, I don't see why you should extend a lockdown there unless you don't believe the one you have. So I agree with him when he says we haven't reached the peak of our curve, but I won't say that yes, that means we should extend the lockdown. I will say we should modify it on the basis of the insights that the information we have gleaned gives us. That's if we understand the information. Because you see, if you make the wrong assumption about the information you have, then you make the wrong conclusion. If you honestly look at the numbers we have, and if the numbers are true, it will mean that you can modify the lockdown without increasing new infections. That's if the data you have is true. So it depends on whether the government believes in the data that it is putting out to us. Then I would say they can modify the lockdown.
Right. Now, having said this, there are some people who also decide that they are going to be doing whatever they want. Now, Bernard believes that movement to a very large extent has reduced or has been reducing. But when people also decide to step out, they do it to the extreme. I mean, a case in point is what happened in Accra yesterday, where some traders decided to, just open their shop, go to the market, and people were also there, to shop. I don't know where that...
Is
that a new market? Was that a new market or that was an old market?
Well, it's called the brewery market. Yes. To the best of my knowledge, it's been there for
and this is just last night.
Where exactly is this?
So if you are moving from Adabaka,
yes,
Adabaka, Graphic Road, Adabaka Graphic Road, you see the how do I describe it? The train. You see, there's this
like a railway line.
The railway line.
Oh, so from Graphic, you are going towards Beyeman. The steep. No, when you are coming from Graphic towards ABC,
it's that area basically. It's that area.
So it's actually extension of Agbogbloshie.
Well, you can
extension near AB.
You can say that. Now
coming towards the crossroad that leads you to the EcoBank.
Yeah. Now, Freeman said that people are doing what they want. In some instances, the people are doing what they need to do.
Okay.
Not necessarily what they want. And their needs should be met in a structured way, not to put the rest of us in harm's way.
Absolutely.
You understand? Now, I was talking to my wife, who had spoken to somebody who used to supply us vegetables, used to buy from her.
Yeah.
And she asked her how they get vegetables. And she said that they go to the market in the night. So yesterday, when our colleague went there to record that video, I wasn't surprised. These are a lot of traders who are buying, and you could see a lot of cars there too, trying to buy.
And this was 10 p.m.
Yes, to take back to wherever they operate from, and then sell to other people. So people are doing what they want to do. People are also doing what they need to do. That's why it's important for us to understand the situation we find ourselves in. Also look at the resources available to us, and that will inform the government as to our next move, whether to shut down or not. Because for some people, it's your health that may kill you.
Yeah.
For some people, it's the hunger that will kill you. So whether health or hunger, they are still looking at death in the face. So should they stay at home and die from hunger because they are afraid that when they step out, they are going to get a virus which will kill them? Whichever way you are going to die, so they step out. So we should look at the nuances and the structure of our system to know how to deal with this. When Bernard was talking about the Google data, he said it doesn't really work for him.
Yeah.
Because you cannot take data like this to make a decision. We've locked parts of Accra down, we've locked parts of Kumasi down, but if you go to other areas, there's activity happening. So if you take this data and this is aggregated for the whole country, and you tell yourself you are going to work with this because in Accra, and when people are thinking, they will think about the lockdown areas. Mobility has dropped by 54% to the recreational centers. Even that, how structured is our urban space for us to clearly demarcate recreational center from non-recreational center? Because from Ashaligote to Osu, there are recreational centers and recreational spots littered all over.
Because Ghana, MDR buys a recreational center. Yeah. I don't know whether Google knows that. Because maybe they think ANC Mall or some parks. But somebody's blue kiosk is recreational. So I don't know if they understand this.
Even if ANC Mall and the malls are the main touch points, if you say it's reduced by 54%, we all know that can't be the case because the malls have practically been shut down.
Yeah.
So we cannot base our decisions on this. But I know that the president, as a commander-in-chief, as the chief executive of the company, with different agencies reporting, they're getting a set of data and analysis that will inform them as to what to do next. And all those would also rest upon what we have as resources to keep us going in this particular time. Because in certain areas, we need to start production.
Yeah.
In certain areas, we need to start getting people active so that those places don't collapse. In certain areas, people are hungry. Can the state continue to give the food we give to the people on the regular? Can we afford to feed 400,000 people a day?
Yeah.
Can we afford to feed 15,000 Kayaye? Data that we don't even, because that Kayaye 15,000 data, we don't even know where they are. We don't even know their demographics and a lot of things. So all those will inform the president as to what to do. So I expect the president to announce the next round of action based on the information available to him and to take a decision in the interest of the state. He's done well so far by putting together everything and taking us through this particular process. And you expect another well thought through strategy to help us deal with the situation. The agencies that must ensure that work is ongoing and our fight is won, they must do that responsibly. They should not be wasting public funds on different and so-called actions that are supposed to be used to deal with COVID-19.
Yeah.
Why am I saying this? Yesterday we published a story that the German government is giving money to Noguchi, to KCCR. Yeah. Private individuals have given money to Noguchi. We are saying that our test rate, even though it's good on the continent, we still have a lot of backlog.
Yeah.
How are we putting money in these priority areas now so that we can collect the right data to inform the decision that we make?
Yeah.
Right? How are we resourcing NCC, ISD, environmental health officers, district health officers to educate people properly so that we don't see what we saw last night?
And in fact, with the last night issue, so the market women have been there since Monday. They started off in front of the Bayer man, and the police came in to drive them away, and they moved to another place. So what we saw last night was their new location that they've moved to. So since Monday, they have been operating.
And it's also, there's also a question. How can this be happening on the blind side of intelligence agencies?
So I don't even know who is using intelligence, because they seem to be ahead of the security.
But how do you know that they don't know?
But if they knew.
Right, so
we recorded a video around 10 p.m.
So let's watch a video of how they've been operating since Monday.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so we are going to be having that soon.
Okay.
But Bernard, let me quickly ask you this. If there's going to be an extension of the lockdown, what should we be doing differently, especially if you're looking at how these market women are behaving?
Obviously, the targeting of relief should be better done. I have said that I don't expect an extension of a blanket lockdown like what we have. I would expect a more nuanced, localized, because you can't have 60,000 tests and still simply lock down.
All right, so
large parts of Greater Accra.
The video is ready.
Yes, so yeah.
Right, so this is what has been going on. You can see the market women set up right along the streets.
So the Odo is on your left, yes. And on the right is what you call Beyema, before the traffic light that takes you to Zenith Bank on the right, and then Obechebi Lamte. So initially this is where they were.
Exactly.
Now the ABC market is moving further left. So you come to the steep overpass, you get to traffic light, go further ahead, and then on your right, after ABL, you have that new market. So it seems as if they started here, and they've been migrating, migrating eastwards. Because it's, look, we've interviewed lots of these people. The truth is that if they don't sell, they can't survive. So we were expecting the assemblies to come up with some modalities for how markets can operate, where you can decide that you divide the market into 4 or 5 and say on Mondays only fruit sellers will come. They will spread themselves out. The key point is to reduce the interaction.
Exactly.
But you can't say 90% of our economy should just go and sit in the house for 3 weeks and not work.
But this is certainly not the way to go, and it breaks my mind, Kojo, to where is the security? Is it a case that maybe during the day they are very visible, you see them, and maybe in the night they go and also rest? Because these are traders who are operating in the night. So clearly they know that police won't be there, military won't be there.
We've not seen the full military brief, right? Security brief. But knowing how the situation is, I do not believe their responsibility is to only be at the checkpoints or be policing the system only during the day. And their responsibility is to work around the clock to ensure that the lockdown is properly monitored and enforced. And since Monday, if traders have been doing this and they've moved from place to place, and last night they were able to have a deba of a marketplace
at 10 p.m.
At 10 p.m.
Which we're also going to buy.
It went all the way to about 1, 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And nobody made any move to ensure that we
it's also because we've reduced the power of our assemblies. You see, the AMA 10 years ago was a very powerful institution. You slice and dice it now, it's almost toothless.
So you can see down the demarcation. This is at the Beyeman yard. So there's a demarcation, where every trader is supposed to.
But at night you won't see these lines. So obviously, if somebody's selling at night, it's not an aspiration of AMA. My point is that you've weakened the assemblies everywhere in the world. Lockdowns are declared nationally but enforced locally. Okay, but you don't deploy nationally because locally the people who work in assemblies will know and they are in contact with their market people. So I think one of the things you should do going forward is to empower the assemblies to take charge of the whole market issue. Because if they are selling in the day and you are giving them specific spaces, then at least we can monitor. At 10 p.m., there's nobody there checking social distancing. So it's really important for us to allow the local government to allow the assemblies to work or direct them. Because we are going to have a bigger crisis if we don't manage this. For people to be selling from 10 p.m., isn't it better to sell during the day? When you can even see social distance than at night? When you don't even know who is coming to buy, you don't know where they are coming from. Look at this and say, the lockdown strategy has not worked, or the way it's been implemented has not been the best, so it should be modified, having had 3 weeks of lessons. So hopefully by the time Mr. President speaks to us, the new measures would have anticipated some of these issues and make sure that they don't occur in the next round.
Right, Kojo, let me quickly take your closing points.
We are in difficult times, and I'll still say what I've been saying. Let's intensify the education. Whilst we intensify the education, let's use the local assembly structures to put in place logistical measures to ensure that, for example, markets, the dental market women know where they source their stuff from. Is the assembly helping them to go to where they source their stuff from to bring stuff into the market? Is the assembly communicating with the people within Adenta to know how to buy things safely from their market? If we use these systems right, we could reduce some of the uncertainties that these market women face that force them to do what they do because they need to go out there to get the stuff to go and sell anyway. So let's use the local assembly systems. Let's use whatever resources we have. But importantly, let's intensify the education and effectively communicate to people for them to understand what you are dealing with. If we do better there and the other things we do, we put them in place right and execute them right, we'll be in a good position to deal with this.
Right, thank you very much, Kuju. So tonight on the Citi Newsroom on CNR, we'll be delving deeper into these market women's behavior and look at moving on into maybe an extension of lockdown, how we should be moving about and doing our stuff in all to help the spread of COVID-19. Thank you very much, Kuju. Thank you very much, Bernard. So I have been doing this with Kuja Kutubuateng, Head of Research and New Media, and Bernard Avle, who is General Manager, Citi FM, Citi TV, and also host of Point of View on Citi TV and Citi Breakfast Show on Citi FM. My name is Frima Edunyami. Thank you very much for your time. And don't forget, stay home. As long as the lockdown is on, yours is to stay at home. Thanks for watching again and joining us on Citi FM. Have a great day.